I go to a school where I have a lack of resources. I go to a school in a shared building with 3 other schools. I go to a school that has only 3 black teachers. My school has no auditorium. That's unacceptable.
My name is Heather Clarke. I am an adjunct professor in early childhood development. As an educator, I support black families for this very reason. Because if we know more, we can advocate for more. Now let's get started. This is a really big issue for our black children across this country, even in my own children's school and growing up myself. One of the first things that I always recommend as both a parent and an educator is that schools and classroom teachers decolonize their library. What are the books that you're reading aloud every day in your read aloud? What are the things that you have on the wall? And this has to go beyond Martin Luther King Day and Black History Month. What are you having in your classroom that represents black joy, black heroes, black art? I would like to see that the classroom is filled with all sorts of types of diversity. And it shouldn't just be tokens. It should be just a protagonist that has a black boy in it. That's not just Washington Carver. It should just be a book like Jabari Jumps, which is a fantastic book and just happens to have a black boy who is scared to jump in a pool, but then he overcomes his fear and jumps into the pool in the deep end. Or Ira Crumb Makes a Friend, about a dark-skinned boy who is afraid to make a friend at a new school. These are things that should be represented all throughout the year. The kids should see themselves reflected. So you have to have a conversation with the teacher, with the school, and make sure that they're decolonizing their classroom and the school. Absolutely, Kayvon. That's a great question, and I'm glad you've asked because many parents are confused about their rights. Under the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, which protects the rights of children with disabilities, you are not only allowed to request things for your child with an individual education plan or IEP. Those are your child's civil rights, which are protected under federal law. You absolutely have the right, and you should request and demand that the school and the teacher is doing everything to make sure your child is thriving and they are in compliance with the IEP. If you feel that the IEP is not providing enough for your child to thrive in the classroom and in that school, you can always request a reconvening meeting to add more services and or accommodations to that IEP. And you absolutely should, because remember, that is a federal document. It travels with your child and you from state to state, wherever you are, district to district. So definitely do whatever you have to do to make sure they are in compliance with your child's IEP. Hi, Javon A. I feel your pain. My own kids hate doing homework. From what we know academically, evidence-based research, homework, especially in elementary school and even middle school, really doesn't provide any benefits. My advice to you is to push back on the idea of homework. In fact, some school districts have eliminated homework altogether, believe it or not. One of the things that I've done in one of the educational groups that I run in my school district is we have instituted something where we write the teachers and we say, look, we will spend X amount of time on homework, and if the homework isn't all completed by X amount of time, we're just not going to do it, and we're going to spend time on meaningful family activities instead. Or I'm going to take my kids to the park because they need playtime. And we just hope you understand. If you have a critical mass of parents who feel the same way, then the teachers will comply and the school will comply. So I highly recommend you push back on this idea that kids should be spending 45 minutes to an hour every night on homework. The evidence just does not support the idea of that. So if your kid is tantruming and fighting over doing homework, it's probably too much homework. Your child would be better served doing whatever they need to do to decompress. I think one of the best ways to foster a great relationship with a student's teacher is to reach out to them and to let them know that you are there in partnership with the teacher, to let them know that you're there to help and if you can. Parents and teachers are both working banana hours. Everybody is kind of at their limits. But send them an email and say, are you having a read aloud? Can I come in and do a read aloud? I shared last year for my son's elementary school about Juneteenth. And you would be surprised at the positive reaction for doing things like that, because teachers are overwhelmed. And so just reaching out, you are building that relationship. You're also sharing your culture and you're sharing that cultural competency. That cultural competency is not only good for your children and for Black children, but it's also positive for children who aren't Black to see our culture in that way. That's one thing that I really recommend. There are a lot of different things to consider when you are discussing changing a child from a class. Number one, if there is any kind of safety issue involved, that is an immediate, you change the child from a class. And sometimes you even have a safety transfer from a school. That is like an immediate. Like if there is any kind of physical danger, then that's immediate, you're changing the class. Other issues with gray areas, a lot of that is up to the discretion of the administration of the school, unfortunately. It is much harder to decipher and get down to the nitty-gritty when we're talking about changing a class, right? Because maybe they don't like the teacher because she gives too much work, or maybe the personalities don't mesh. But it's not a safety issue. And the administration is very unlikely to change a child over something like that. If it's a safety issue where there's bullying going on, physical harm going on, harassment going on, you have a documented case, and that is something that, yes, you absolutely can do.